Do you see yourself as a leader?
Yeah, I'm definitely a leader, and I've taken that role and I've chosen to have that role. But I've chosen to have that role because I think I can make a difference. There is definitely a need to be recognised, and everyone wants to be wanted and needs to be needed. But I also think I'm quite good at it. I can lead people well on their terms, not just by you've got to do as I say.
Yeah. There's not an iron fist with you. You make
Oh.
people want to do stuff.
That's the
Do you know what I
plan.
mean? Like if you were
That's a
my
great
teacher, I'd
feeling.
want to do my homework so I didn't get upset you or make you disappointed
I'm
in me.
manipulative.
Yeah. In a nice way.
No, I think I incentivize people in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is called the Getting Back Up podcast. So to get back up, you got to suffer setback. You got to fall down. Can you tell me some times in your life where you've been? I often talk about how life is like boxing. Boxing's like life. The things we go through in a boxing match is echoed in life and vice versa. That's why Rocky was the first sports movie to ever win an Oscar as the best picture. Like we get knocked down in life. It happens. We suffer setbacks and adversity, and at one point or some point, oftentimes in our lives, we find ourselves flat back on our ass, on our back, looking up the lights, and the referee is counting 1, 2, 3. We've been knocked down and not knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
When we're down in that moment, we have a decision to make. If we get back up or we stay down. Can you please tell me some moments in your life when you've been knocked down but not out?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the first one that comes to mind was when my mum died when I was 21. It floored me. It was unexpected. I had massive anger around it because I actually remember, this is awful. I remember getting a message telling me I needed to get home because something was wrong. And so my mum had had a massive heart attack, basically. Hardening of the arteries is what it stated on a death certificate. She'd actually had 2 strokes when I was really young. So I was 6 and she had 2 strokes, which had paralysed her completely down the right side.
Oh, really?
There was a knock at the front door and she stood up to answer the door. Because like mum ruled the roost, you know what I mean? And also everyone else was lazy. So I'm one of 6. If you got up out of your seat, you lost your seat. So no one was moving.
Mm.
So there was a knock at the door and my mum got up to answer it and she just fell back down in a chair. And I thought she'd had when you've been sitting down, because she used to sit in a certain way. She used to sit on her chair, which was there in the corner of the living room. She used to tuck her legs up underneath her, and it's the way that I sit. It's the thing that I'm like, I do it. And I'm like, oh, she used to sit. I thought she had pins and needles and she fell back down. She went to get up again and she fell back down. And I just remember my dad saying, go and get the door. So we answered the front door. And I was shielded from loads of it because I was 6. So she had 2 massive strokes, one immediately after the other. Completely paralysed down the right side, couldn't use. My mum had the most beautiful handwriting and she lost the ability to write. Her speech was slurred, the side of her face dropped down. But she also didn't remember me and my sister. So there's 4 kids, then a 10-year gap and 2 of us. And she called me by the wrong name. I remember going into the hospital to see her. We weren't allowed to go into the hospital to see her. And I remember one day specifically going into the hospital to see her. And the confused look on her face, and she turned to me dad and said, Charlie, who's that? And it was me and my sister, and I just burst out crying because my mum didn't remember us.
Oh my gosh, so sad.
Anyway, the legend that she was. She fully regained the use of her right-hand
She did.
side. Yep, fully regained. Her speech massively improved. She had a stammer as a result of it, but that only ever came out when she was angry. And so, which was hilarious because my mum never swore. So she'd say things like 4 cakes or, sugar. But a stammer had always come out when she was angry. And my brother Carl used to wind her up. And she'd and then still say 4 cakes at the end of it. So she fully recovered. 4 cakes.
4 cakes.
Instead of fuck it.
Oh, thank you.
Or sugar instead of, or shine a light. And it was like, she's so cute. If she ever swore, you were in big trouble. And so because she'd recovered from that and had no lasting side effects, if you like, I was 6 at that point in time. So obviously it was many moons later that she passed away. And because she was fit and healthy, and she'd smoked for years, but she'd stopped smoking and she was, fit and healthy. And then she was gone in such a short space of time. And I was so angry and so annoyed and so upset, and I took it out in all the wrong ways. I was so lost because she was like, what do you do when your mum's not there? She's the person you go to when things are good and you want to share the good news. She's the person you go to when things are bad. And and I was just totally and utterly lost. I I was in second year of university, and I was like, "Fuck that, I'm not going back. What's the point?" Like, I didn't wanna do anything. And after 2 weeks, I went back to work. So the reason I became a HR manager in Morrison's was I had 2 part-time jobs because we were told, "You want something, you work hard for
To
it." So I
work
used to
in.
work during the evenings as a data entry clerk in DHL. So I used to, all the lads would come in, they'd gone and done the rounds all of the day, they'd come back with their unit and their paperwork. I'd download the unit, I'll go and do all the paperwork. So I'd sit there for like 3 or 4 hours keying in information. I used to work in there on the Saturday morning as well, just because I'm a nosy cow. That's basically why, because people would bring in a parcel and I had to check the parcel before I sent it. So I got to see all sorts of randomness there. Got taught how to make a bomb, which was always fun because you have
Nice.
to look out for one. So it was like, I'm learning life skills
Oh,
here.
yeah.
And I used to work as a checkout operator for Morrison's. And like literally my world ended when my mum died. And about 2 weeks later, I went back to work because I couldn't sit around with everyone asking, "How are you? And you okay?" And also, I there were so many reminders of her in the house. It was like that's where a cup of tea sat because she always had a chair right in the corner. That was her seat. And stupid stuff. Like there was one day when I went home and her glasses were on the side, and it was like, I can't do this. I can't have all these reminders of how she's not here. So I went back to work after a couple of weeks. It's actually a ridiculous story. I went back to work, not because I'm like, the strong one, but because I just couldn't be there. And I was working on the checkout, and there I am, literally robbing a living because I just didn't even want to be there. Some woman handed me her money. And as she handed me her money, I looked up and just thought, "Oh, that's my mum's hand." And then I looked up and it wasn't my mum there. And
Oh.
I broke down in tears. This poor woman's like, I'm just trying to pay for my shopping, love. By
Mm,
that point, I'm a blubbering mess. The HR manager comes, takes me
mm.
off the till, and she's like, "It's probably not a good idea for you to be here." And so, like, the ref got a 9 on that one. I was, what's the point? Like, and I was really
You got to
angry.
9. You got to 9. You got up, though.
I did,
You got
but
up,
that's only because of the people that were around me. I'm like
but you got
really,
up.
really lucky that I've got. And I'm my mum's daughter. She was the strongest person I knew. Like my mum, there was a man who lived in. No one knows any of this shit. There was a man who lived in the close that we lived in because the way it changed. My dad still lives there now. And it used to be a big square, so there was this huge green in the middle that we all used to play rounders around, adults and kids. And it was great when my mum, she'd stop peeling the potatoes to come out and hit a ball, run round, and then go back in and finish tea. And there was a man who lived there, and he hated our family, hated us. He hated everyone in the street. He used to call the police on everyone. They're
Oh,
doing this, they're doing that. He was absolutely awful. And I remember my mum. He was huge. He was like, when we were little, he was huge. He was like 6'2", built. And I remember my mum fronting him and being like, I fucking dare you. Do you know what I mean? You pick on everyone. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and all those little
go on,
phrases. And she
girl.
took no shit from anyone. And she's told me so many stories from when she was younger, which is probably a big reason I'm a massive fan of a storytelling scenario and everyone having a story. And I remember her telling me she used to work in a pub, and the owners of the pub, the landlady and landlord, and the landlord used to beat his wife, and she was like having none of it.
Mm,
She picked up a plank of wood and threatened to beat him. You leave her alone, you don't touch her. She hated unjust and unfairness.
mm.
And so I think that's probably where it comes from, is that, she never backed down from anything. She never gave up. She'd been through so much shit in her life, unbelievable amounts. So I think there was probably some guilt that kind of kept me going through it as well, because the anger was there and the frustration. And I remember on the day of a funeral having a go at my eldest brother and saying, "You've got no right to be upset because you got it for 40 years and I got it for 21. What a fucking awful thing for me to say. But it's how I felt. I was angry and annoyed, and I was 21. Like, you're still a
Baby.
kid. Yeah. Um, but yeah, no, I've just decided that, you know, she lives on in everything that we do. My kids know all about her.
Mm.
She was an absolute superstar, and she never, ever would have given up. So
You
what
can't.
right do I have? Yeah.
What's your mum's name?
Well, she was one of those people who had lots of different names. Officially, so her name was actually Evelyn Veronica, but she was always Ronnie. So she
Ronnie.
was, yeah, on my sherry.
So I'm raising my
My
cup of tea to
sherry.
Ronnie. What a legend.
She is.
And hearing you talk, I don't know what she looks like, but I saw her as you were talking, because you are your mum's daughter and you sit like her. I've seen you sit like her. But the passion of what you talk and what did you do? Did you work, your mum?
Oh, you talked about your mum having lots of different jobs. My mum had every different job that you can imagine. She did whatever it took to raise her kids.
And I bet she was the best at it. I
Yep.
bet she was the one who remembered his name and inspired
She
the
was
team. And
a landlady. She worked in shops. She worked in offices. She used to, when we were kids, she did literally every job that she needed to do. She used to clean in the local supermarket. She used to knit clothes and sell them. So she used to knit clothes. I say sell them. She used to pretend to sell them, but actually give them away because, the little baby, I'll just give her. So she used to knit bonnets and little cardigans and stuff. She did whatever it took to raise a family, but she always did it well.
no doubt. You've got a very inspiring story about one of your brothers, haven't you?
Yeah. See, you say inspiring. It's not. I think put in that situation, most people would do the same thing. So in 2012, my brother, who's closest to me in age, is 12 years older than me. He had a tiny little bump in the car. So he used to work for Jaguar Land Rover. As he was driving out to work, someone bumped into the back of him. And because there's a doctor on site, it was always like, we'll get you checked out. He didn't think he had any injuries, no whiplash, none of that. And the doctor was concerned because his blood pressure was high. He tried to kind of say, well, someone's just bumped into the back of me. That's quite normal. But long story short, his blood pressure was really high because, which they didn't realise at that point in time, his kidneys were actually failing. So his kidneys had never fully functioned. They'd never fully formed. So he had really small kidneys.
And he had no idea.
No idea. He used to suffer kidney pain. We grew up in Liverpool. It's rough. When he was in his early 20s, him and his mates got into a big fight. They got into a big fight. He took some kicks to the back. And so he'd always suffered with like kidney pain, or, if he didn't drink enough water, he had water infections or whatever. And he'd always just put it down to when he'd been beaten up. But in reality, actually, his kidneys had never fully functioned. And it was a miracle that he'd never had more symptoms, because when they checked him, it's in the lead up to Christmas. It's literally days before Christmas. I remember going in to see him. We all going in to see him at the hospital. I was like, oh, here he is, because he's always been a drama queen. I'd do anything for a bit of attention, lying there in the hospital bed, and it's like, peel me grapes. Fuck off, do it yourself. And he said, I know what I want for Christmas. And we were like, oh God, here we go. He's going to ask for something, because he thinks he's really special now. And he asked for a kidney. And it was a bit like, oh. So his kidney function was fluctuating between 9 and 11%. Basically, when you get to 10%, you tend to usually go on dialysis because your kidneys aren't functioning. And his were kept fluctuating, so they go up a little bit. So he was really lucky he didn't have to go on to dialysis, but he needed a kidney transplant. And so the whole family got tested to see who could donate a kidney to him. The way it works is they do it on it was like a competition. We all used it as a competition. It was quite funny. Basically, on a match, 6 out of 6 is the best match. You're a perfect match. Therefore, the recipient's going to need less, immunosuppressants and all the drugs and stuff. So the better the match. So me and one of my sisters, perfect match 6 and 6. My other 2 sisters, perfect match 6 and 6. My eldest brother couldn't do it. He's got heart murmur, as I'd since he was younger. And so it was one of the 4 girls. So we were all the 6 and 6 match with one another, and none of us were with Carl. So that obviously led to us telling him he was the milkman's or, the window cleaners or whatever. Me and Keely, who were a perfect match for one another, were both a 3 and 6 match, which is deemed suitable. The others were a 1 and 6. So it wasn't fair to put them through it or for them to put Carl through it. So yeah, me and Keely basically had a big old row over who it was. I believed I was in the best position to do it.
But you say that, but you believe you had the best position. You were getting married in 2 weeks' time.
No, it wasn't at that point. It was a little while away still.
But when you gave the kidney, you got married 2 weeks later.
Yeah, we changed the date.
And you had a
2-year-old.
two,
Just one.
Just one.
No, I'd always said I'd never have kids. I was too selfish. Then, they say you meet the right person, blah, blah, blah. Met Chris, and really quickly we knew that we were going to stay together. We wanted kids.
How long?
We were engaged and pregnant inside of 13 months. So it was quite quick. We went on holiday to the Maldives and came back engaged and pregnant. Don't go to the Maldives, it's bad for you. Everything happened faster than planned. And so I'd always wanted 2. I never wanted an only child. I'd gone to school with only children who I always thought they seemed lonely, and it was like, oh, that's not fair. So I always wanted 2. Chris always said that he wanted 3 until we had Oliver, and that changed. And so that was the hardest part, I think, because you've been through a million surgeries, you sign all of the waivers, the forms, you could die, is the risk, blah, blah, blah. And one of the risks was oftentimes people, when they only have one kidney, if you're born with one kidney, your body can function with it.
Yeah.
If you're donating a kidney, then your body has to get used to it. So you may struggle to conceive. And that was kind of like, well, I'm blessed to have one child because some people don't have any. So that was the only kind of, well, we always wanted to, but if it's meant to be, it'll be. Yeah, so that's why I believed I was in the best position. Keely, was able to do it. It was the logistics around it. It was stupid. I got 100% sick pay for 6 weeks. I had people living with me who could look after me. And I'm still my mum's daughter. It was like, if anyone's going to do it, I'm going to do it. No one else should have to go through that. So it could or should have happened earlier. Basically, when you go through the testing and stuff, I had to have the biopsy was worse than anything. They made me have a biopsy because every time they do your tests and stuff, they're like, because there's always a trace of urine in your blood in your urine. That's all right. Surely that's not an issue. No, we've got to do a biopsy and just check because we don't want you to basically have a kidney problem or to pass another problem to Carl. And so that was horrible. I had to lay face down, wide awake, while they basically cut away a little tiniest sliver of your kidney to send it off for testing. So they put this needle. It was horrific because do you know what was most horrific? It was painful. But what was most horrific was they then lie you on your back and it's like, you got to lay there for 12 hours. Can't do anything. I can't not do anything. Plus, I was 29 and I'm like, if you think I'm using a catheter, you're having another thought. I'm not peeing in a bedpan and you're not catheterising me. I'm getting up and I'm walking to that toilet. So Carl had come and he brought me Ribena because that's what everyone needs. And I was like, I need a wee. And they were like, well, unfortunately, we'll get you a bedpan. I was like, you will not. I'm 29, not 99. I'm going to the toilet. And so in the end, they gave in and made me not. I think I'd done 7 of the 12 hours because they were like, just fucking let her go because she's really doing her head in. So I got to go home a little bit earlier.
She's Ronnie's daughter, all right?
Just a nightmare.